you want to get on with people, but everybody has a skill and you can learn something from. And I think
Well, yeah,
that's how you progress.
that's what I did with my dance instructor. I was like, you know more than me. I'm just gonna do what you tell me how to do, or I'm gonna do
Yeah,
what you tell me to do, and it's working out so really well
yeah,
so far.
it certainly is.
So when you're planning on using, like, do you think that it'll be like a robot who's gonna take your job and just do heart surgeries? Is that like a goal
Uh,
that you're trying to get to, or
I don't think that humans will ever be out of the loop
okay?
in this, and I hope not. I think that it's probably up to us to be rational about using the things that we develop in machine learning to make us better, to augment us, to make a faster decision about cancer so we don't have to get lung cancer and lose a family member, to predict atrial fibrillation and reduce the chances of having a stroke,
Yeah.
um, to determine the longevity of a bypass graft in your dad, and say he doesn't need it, or predict that using the genomic profile and the proteomics that my son Donnie will not get to have a heart attack, and how can I prevent him from having heart surgery ever?
Hope
So
not. My
I,
grandfather died of a heart attack. My dad just almost died. I've been eating as good as I can eat. I've always exercised, always, been an athlete. So that's been a major concern for me because I'm like, okay. And even though my dad and my grandfather had different heart issues, which my dad's heart is fine, obviously he just had a blockage. My grandfather had an actual heart attack, but that's obviously still a concern. I'm like, I don't want those issues.
so how about we identify that whole 3D, 4D mix of
Okay.
your granddad, your dad, and you, and then we say, look, we've got a target that we can use to prevent you from having any further blockages in your coronaries, and we check that once a year.
Mhm.
Wouldn't that be cool?
Yes.
So I think we're going to do that.
Cool. How like far away do you think you are from being able to use that?
I think we're getting close to. I think first of all, basing it in a hospital-based system is important because that's where the rich data is that you can add context to. Otherwise, it's meaningless.
Yep.
So any company doing this, good luck. But you don't have any patient data that means anything
Mhm.
to the data that you're getting anonymously. So I think, which is what kind of bothers me a little about um, physicians not being in the loop, because if you start autonomously creating code and autonomously saying, okay, I'm going to start building this out, it's going to spin off where it doesn't have any real world value.
Mm.
And I think we need to be doing the things that allow us to make us better physicians, but also treat patients quicker and
Yeah.
better and faster. And also predict things that you won't get and then preventing it. That's the holy grail.
So I've seen you post about COVID and other diseases. And obviously you're working on prevention now. So what are all the fields that you're working on or trying to use this AI to help, people with all different types of diseases?
Well, there's cardiac,
Hmm.
there's oncology, there's neurodegenerative,
Hmm.
and there's longevity. So there's four areas. And I think these are the four pillars of life, I think. So in cardiac, it's all about how can I predict sudden cardiac death? Uh, how can I know when somebody's going to die? How can I predict a heart attack? How can I predict heart failure? How can I predict recovery? And various flavors. How can I predict atrial fibrillation and stroke? How can I predict people who have cancer and recurrence of cancer? Um, and then in the cardiovascular, it's also diabetes as well, and all the complications. How can you prevent renal failure? And then with longevities, well, how can I predict how long you're going to live for? And are there any cool things that we can do to, you asked me earlier about lifestyle, and you asked me about, supplements and things like that. I think that there are certain metabolic changes that we can use to change your metabolism. And I've published a lot on mitochondria. And I think it's, the workhorse of your body.
Yep.
And I think that if I guess what I do every day, I stop the heart every day. So that means I put it into hibernation and I awaken it again whenever I've finished doing what I needed to do. So I'm very attuned to time, mitochondria, temperature, and how we can protect an organ. So by that extension, how can we improve longevity? How can we prevent from getting there? And how can we say, okay, you've got a pathology, how can we prevent it from progressing? How can we reverse it? And is there a way to do that? And I think that there is. And I think that there's many metabolic targets. For example, Google, DeepMind created Alpha Fold 2, which is about 200 million proteins that it can now predict protein folding and targets for protein folding. And so it can predict targets. And I think we could do things in similar fashion. And you don't need a quantum computer to do that.
Mm.
So I think you just have to be intelligent and ask the right question and use the tools in a savvy way.
So you're able to predict how long people are going to live?
Yes. And I think that's feasible. And also predict the silent killers. So
I
that are
don't know
just
if I would.
waiting.
I don't know if I would want to know that.
Yeah, that's a cool idea, right? Would you, if you were told that you had heart failure and you had 6 months to live, how would that change your life?
Um, I just would try to enjoy every single day because, for example, after my dad had the heart surgery last year, I've had a great relationship with my dad, but you just try and appreciate, you know, things a little bit more. And, my dad and I love sports together. So, like he was finally, 2 months ago, finally able to go to a hockey game for the first time since his surgery. So just, I don't know, just appreciate the little things a little bit more.
And so how often in your day do you actually get before that stuck down with just a regular day and not appreciating that moment too?
Not as often. I try to, appreciate it more, but yeah, definitely not as often.
So if you know that you're going to get hanged tomorrow,
Mm.
wouldn't that focus your mind very intensely?
Yes, but so when you say you're gonna be able to predict how long they're gonna
So
live,
that's how I try to live every day
yeah. No,
because
I
I'm seeing it every day.
yeah,
So when somebody comes to tell me their problem, um, I actually take it personally
yeah,
and I say, okay, how do you change it?
that's true. Got to focus on solutions, not problems.
Yeah, but I mean, that doesn't mean that I'm saying that what you're saying is wrong. I mean, there's some things I'd rather not know.
Well, I mean,
You
like,
know,
so obviously, I would want to know if you could tell me, because like I've heard Dr. Strongers talk about where he's going to be able to, tell you if you're going to get Alzheimer's or Parkinson's or something in the future. Yeah, that'd be good to know. But are you going to be able to determine just if somebody were going to die of natural causes, or something along those lines? Do you think that that's in the realm of possibilities?
how about if I change it and I say, we're going to tell you how long you're going to live based on these predictions.
Hmm.
How about we have some solutions that could reverse that and then change your longevity? So if we know when you're going to die, how about if we change and we know what the like 5 key problems are? How
Yep.
about we can change and extend your life, knowing what those problems are
Yeah.
based on your biological age, your telomere length, your metabolism, your metabolomics.
Yeah.
And now we say, okay, I'm going to change that.
So all that sounds great, but what happens to the bones? Is that you using those or affecting those proteins? Does that make your bones because your bones get brittle the older you get? So yeah, you can make a heart last longer and all that. So does that affect the bones also?
So I saw. Yeah, every day in my clinic, or every Monday in the clinic that I have, I always get some 88-year-olds and 92-year-olds, sometimes 96-year-olds, and I say, "What's the secret?" And they kept on saying strength training, and that's why I'm a big fan of that. But
Yep.
at the same time, we live in a blue belt, and in
Mm.
Scottsdale, in Arizona, and there's a lot of secrets out there that people could change. And so I think when today I saw an 88-year-old, um, I said to him, "You would be able to handle the surgery because your bones are good, and you do bone density scans, and you know that you can change them. So you can change the metabolism, which includes protein metabolism,
Yeah.
collagen, mineralization, and people are living longer these days because they're attuned to that. So
Yep.
people are living into their 90s. So I'd
Mm.
say, if you can, expect to live to your 90s.
So how much longer do you think you could add? You have any idea?
I think it's a cool question. I think people will live to their 120s by the end of 2030. You'll start seeing people live longer
Yeah.
because people are changing. There's new drugs coming out, for example, that remodel coronary artery disease. Takes about 10 years. Repatha is one of them.
I
Um,
think the coolest thing that I've seen with the medical field, I feel like, is focusing on, immunotherapy, strengthening what you already have inside of you instead of just putting new drugs into you that your body
yeah.
doesn't already have. I feel like that's a really smart way to go about it.
Yeah, I mean, there's some really cool things out there, and I think you know, that's kind of why I was excited about enzylytics. And I will bring it up because I think it's cool that you have a peptide story, which is like Ozempic, right? So you're like
I don't know
putting a
much about
peptide.
Ozempic on it. It's like a weight loss drug, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The I've heard the
Ozempic
jokes about it, but I don't know anything about it.
is a weight loss drugs, and it's
Yeah.
actually changing cardiovascular medicine.
Hmm.
Because it's got anti-inflammatory effects. You inject it, you don't eat as much, you lose weight without a lot of pain,
Yeah.
and the exercise, I guess. But you also reduce cardiovascular disease, and
Hmm.
by extension, you're reducing complications and you're extending life.
Yeah.
And so I think that's just one peptide hitting the right target, right? And you've got now several different iterations of Ozempic with different companies calling them different things like Mounjaro and everything else. But imagine you could find the secret source of longevity,
Yeah.
and now you give them a cocktail. And there are Russians in St. Petersburg that actually have those proteins,
Hmm.
which they've been giving to Russian athletes in the 70s and 80s. And they have done phenomenal.
Yeah.
And
They were.
those are the secret sources that are out there, but a lot more data and science needs to be done to make it more mainstream.
Wow. Well, I think the biggest thing is also diet. We talked about that on our phone call to prep for this. Is just the diet. I feel like is so bad, and it just kills people, and not even just physically, mentally also. So yeah, you got to strength train and all that for your bones, but what do you do with somebody who hasn't taken care of themselves?
So there's one extreme, right? Of you think of all the famine that's going on in Gaza. How do you recondition them?
Yep.
Um, and reconditioning is an art or a science, but it's the same thing with sick people. When people have heart failure, they become cachectic,
Mm.
and it's called cardiac cachexia. And so you've got to change the metabolism. And I think that once you start doing that with supportive kind of diets, which could be smart. And you're right. One thing that you said was really cool was that it affects you mentally.
Mhm.
And I think sugar is a bad thing. Um, it's one of my vices, unfortunately, and I may say that, but I actually see it, and I think in moderation it's fine.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of diets that are out there that are complete fads. There's a lot of uh, you know fasting that's could be good for you, could be bad for you. But the moment you start screwing up your metabolism,
Okay,
that
yeah, I would
that
love to
messes
hear your
you.
thoughts on fasting because I've done that. So I got to 185, which was way too much for me in my mid 20s, and I was like, I'm not spending my prime overweight. I'm gonna lose weight, right? So I started doing intermittent fasting because I heard somebody on Joe Rogan's podcast. They were like only eating like an 8 hour window, and I thought that it was good because it learned to tell my mind no. I learned how to train my mind, and your mind is a muscle. And so I learned how to train my mind to say no, whether it's a sweet, whatever you put in front of me. I don't need it right now. I can have it, but later. Um, but then I also do feel like, well, I don't know if I can live like this forever because they're depending upon, I don't do the same things every single day. Some work days are harder than others. Some days I dance more than others. So sometimes I wake up and I am unbelievably hungry and I don't feel like I can function and I have to go to work or I need to go to the gym and I can't do it because I haven't eaten. So I feel like I need to eat. So that's something that I personally struggle with where I'm like, okay, well, should I do this? When should I do this? So I want to hear your thoughts on
So I'll tell you about patients, and I'll tell you about me personally.
it. Okay.
So what I've observed with patients is uh, when you've got to sometimes fast them, keep them nil by mouth before you operate on them.
Mm,
So we started taking their labs and evaluating them, and I thought it was. I have a very, very good friend who was into aging and fasting,
mm.
and of course he was Italian and a good friend, and now he's in Australia. His name is Luigi Fontana, and he's a very cool guy, but he was, thinner than a rake, and he says, I said, "What's the secret?" He says, "I am fasting," and he became this world expert on fasting.
Mm,
And so I asked him, I said, "Well, what do you think?" And he said, um, "You do become anti-inflammatory, but which means that it's actually good for you
yeah.
because heart disease is a pro-inflammatory disease. Heart
Mm,
failure is a pro-inflammatory disease, um, along with all the baggage of everything else. There's been lots of cancer stories where you starve to sugars, and
yeah.
a lot of mice models that show that there's less metastases, and that's what people do, and they go into the ketogenic diets.
Yeah.
So I think so. I've tried all of them. I think that one thing is what you said, and it was a consistent thing with what you said. It was mentally, it's more difficult,
Mm,
and it becomes a strain. And I understand that there could be, you know, moderation. Um, and so I've kind of defaulted to that. I've got a really cool friend of mine. He's called Ben Taylor, and he's absolute nut. He does a 50-mile marathon on 0 calories, and he's totally nuts. He is a huge AI guy, and I told him that one day your heart's going to stop, and don't count me in to save you. Um, but uh, he feels much more alive
mm,
and much more mentally. Once you get over a certain hump, I think your body accommodates. And I think that when it reaches a certain reset point, it's the same thing with people who do uh, cold baths, right? And you hit your heat shock proteins and improves your longevity.
yeah.
I actually believe that because I do go for cold showers. I can't do the plunge because I'm just weak.
Have you ever
But
done cryotherapy?
no, tell me about that. Have you?
Oh yeah, I love it. Um, so they put you in a chamber and I think it gets like minus 300, but you can only be in there for 3 minutes. They put oven mitts on you and socks. But it gets rid of all the inflammation in your body. But it is such a mental grind because the first time I went there, they're like, all right, we're gonna put you in there for 3 minutes. I first heard about it. There was an offensive lineman for the Cleveland Browns, Joe Thomas. I saw it on
Wow.
a video interview he did. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna try that. So I tried it and they're like, all right, we'll put you in there for 3 minutes. And I'm a savage. So I was like, I'm not getting out of here. I'm gonna sit this through the entire 3 minutes. But about halfway through, You don't feel so good, and I'm just sitting there screaming and jumping up and down and huffing and puffing to get myself going. But you feel great afterwards. But it makes you feel very primal. And same thing whenever I do work out, whenever I'm fasting. I there's a something very primal about it. Um, that's the only way I can really
So
describe it.
I do think though, there's good. I think it's good to fast. I think
Yeah,
that there's a whole culture that does it. The Muslims just did it during Ramadan,
yeah,
and the Jewish religion does it as well as Lent, right? People who
mm,
Catholicism do it,
yeah,
and I think that there is something to be said about longevity. And my wife always tells me, why a lot of poor people live longer than most. Why? Because they've never had food to eat, and they may be cachectic and whatever, but they may live into the 80s and 90s and just die of other diseases. So I think there's something to be said about fasting. And I think what I do is I try to do a 16-hour fast. And I do that routinely.
yeah.
And I think it's easier to do. So you eat really, really early in the evening, like 7 o'clock, and then I don't really have anything until either. Even if it's a cup of coffee, I don't actually eat. I just drink water. So I can also mix up a water fast with that.
What's your
But I also
cutoff
think,
late at night?
oh, I probably don't have anything after 7.
7. So you don't eat breakfast, and you said what, 11 o'clock? You have your first meal.
Uh, no, because I'm usually operating.
Okay, right
So it's
before
about 1 or 2.
1 or 2.
Yeah. So it's about 1 or 2. Yeah. So I do push it quite a long way. And because I'm so focused, I don't really mind.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I do cheat a little. Uh, I do drink energy drinks, which I know is probably not good, but that does get me going
Dr.
because it also
Khalpey,
has the caffeine content.
you gotta there's these caffeine packets. You can get them on Amazon. They're no sugar. It's just straight caffeine, 125 milligrams. You just pour it into a water, shake it up, and drink it. There's no sugar, no crash afterwards. It is phenomenal. I drink it every
No
single
way.
morning.
Definitely send it to me.
Yes, I
But I
certainly.
think 125 milligrams is probably nothing because I
Well,
have so much.
I do take 2 in the morning. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Okay.
I do take 2 in
Okay.
the morning.
Okay. Cool.
But like a Red Bull or something, they
Mm.
only have 80 milligrams of caffeine in
Yeah.
those. But I love it. There's no crash afterwards. Plus, I'm drinking water, and it has electrolytes in it too. So I drink it first thing in the
Okay.
morning, so I feel hydrated.
Oh, send me the link. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can get all sorts of flavors. So it's lemonade. It literally tastes just like lemonade. You can get
Mm.
grape, watermelon, whatever you like.
Oh, cool. That's cool. That's a secret one. That's
Yeah.
nice.
No, I
Thanks for
love that
sharing.
thing. But I've tried to focus a lot on my health, and it's so hard with the to find good food that doesn't put much weight on you.
That plus, what we've kind of defaulted to is just, which is a pain in the ass sometimes, is just to cooking at home. But then it's turned into um, making it much easier,
Yeah.
and because you don't know what oils everybody else is using. So we did come up with a Mediterranean diet on our website, and which I tell all our patients to use before because
Which
it's
website is
anti-inflammatory.
this?
Calpey-ai.com,
Okay.
and you go to patient resources, and it's basically our lab website. And I think most of the patients actually do think it's okay, it's palatable for about 2 weeks before the surgery. Because
Mhm.
I'd rather, I started off during COVID, and I was thinking, okay, let's just go, because I got into this whole thing about, I don't remember, I saw 2 Netflix documentary about just going plant-based. And I think plant-based is cool, but doesn't cut it. Because when you're doing surgery, patients become catabolic. And what we found was you eat a hell of a lot more protein, and about 2,000 calories plus, like 2 times the load, with protein content, about 70 grams per kilogram, 70, at least about 200 grams per day. of protein when you're that catabolic after having heart surgery.
Mm.
And we found their wounds breaking down when they were just on a plant-based diet. And I spoke to the chef in the hospital. We created our own menu, and then we started beefing in the protein, and then we started changing it, and actually changed. And
It was hard to
I
find good
said,
hospital food, Dr. Khalpey.
"Oh no, the hospital food's crap." I totally get it. So yeah, I'm not saying that it's good,
I had to sit
but
there for like 10
if you got a
days.
chef on your side, then it makes a difference. Yeah.
Oh, goodness gracious. Oh man. Let me see. Oh, I meant to tell you. Dr. Chandra did tell me that if you did not say nice things about him during this, that he was going to come
Um,
wrestle you.
He is a sweetheart, and we were doing when I met him. Uh, it was a very down to earth chap. He still is a very humble man
Yeah.
and a very kind soul, and I really like him a lot. And he was working at Harvard
Yeah.
when I was a resident there,
That was only a few years
and
ago, right?
just a few,
Just a
yeah.
few.
It's like 20 years ago, and we were. That's when I met him, I think, and uh, he was doing stuff on diabetes,
Mm,
and we were doing some research together. And I said, "Would it be cool if we do this?" And I was doing islet transplants in different mice, and I thought, well, from mice to men, this translation is not going to work. And he said that he would come up with some really cool ideas, and that's how we actually got to know each other. And then he wanted to do vascular surgery, and we never ever spoke after that.
really?
Until we were on and off, I think, in touch, like maybe a few highs, and then I didn't know what he'd done and
Mm,
how formidable um, he had grown, and how humble he still remained,
mhm.
and that was extremely nice to see. And I thought, wow, well, this is a cool guy that I could definitely do something with. And we just, spoke about a whole bunch of things, including analytics, including this Alzheimer's project that I thought was really cool.
Mm.
And I thought, yeah, of course we can figure out using drug discovery and using machine learning, because most people who spent 20 years doing uh, what they do is spending their life isolating and figuring out what one molecule does. Machine learning, not to poo-poo it, can actually, with the right formula, come up with 20 solutions in 2 years.
Wow.
So I think that's what the beautiful thing is about machine learning, is how you can use it powerfully, creatively, and make a change in one's life, which is why I'm so excited about it. And when he told me the stories of what he was doing, I felt, wow, this is just a natural fit.
Mhm.
Um, and it just he's a great guy, and he he is the right person to in the field to change the field. And I
Wow.
think he's a down to earth man.
I
Yeah.
think you're buttering him up a little bit too much now because he threatened to
I'm
wrestle
gonna take everything back.
you. Nah,
We
he's
were rehearsing this, right?
no, he's a very nice man. But it's cool because, I grew up, playing sports my entire life and I hated school. And I just find it so interesting. I listen to you talk and read about mitochondria and everything. And I was like, man, this is taking me back to like ninth grade. You learn about this stuff, or maybe you probably
Yeah.
learned about mitochondria much earlier than that. And I didn't care about it at all. But now that I'm older, I think it's unbelievably cool, especially with the help of AI of everything you guys are doing.
Yeah.
It's I don't know, so cool how you can affect the future. Um, what do you want to be known for whenever you're dead and gone?
Good question. Um, I think a good dad
Mm,
is important,
I like that.
because you can do all the things that you want to do. And if you can't make or help your kids be better than you, um, then, and also be a good father, but also a good husband, and I've neglected those, and I always feel bad. Uh, but because your immediate circle of friends are um, going to be important to help create your identity.
Yeah.
Um, but when you're gone, how do they remember you?